You're listening to the Cricket Collective on TalkSport 2 and our preview of England's upcoming tour of India. Remember, you can hear every ball of the 4 tests, the 5 T20 internationals and the 3 ODIs live and exclusive here on TalkSport 2. Over the next hour, we'll cover every talking point, or most of them anyway, ahead of the series. Should England have played their strongest squad? Should Jos Buttler go home after the first test? And what Indian side can we expect to see after their heroics in Australia just a few weeks ago? There's so much to get into, and I couldn't do it alone, of course. Joining me today is the former England fast bowler Steve Harmison for the next hour, whilst we also hear from a man who was part of the squad the last time England were in India. Of course, that's our own Gareth Batty. Darren Gough drops by to discuss Joe Root ahead of his 100th cap, and we'll head to Mumbai to speak with the former Indian batsman Akash Chopra in the final quarter. So, much to get into. You're listening to the Cricket Collective on TalkSport 2. Well, Harmy, let's get straight into it. There is a heck of a lot to discuss, and the biggest talking point, I think the most common talking point at the moment, is the rotation policy, and England not picking their best players, subcontinental players. But I just wanted to kick off with a bigger, wider ranging point, and that is what I've experienced is the optimism that England can actually go to India and win this series. And I'm all for optimism. I'm a big fan of that, and I hope it is a classic series. But gosh, it's England. This Indian team is not just impressive, but their record is intimidating. They've only lost one of their last 35 test matches at home. Never mind series. They've won their last 12 series at home. They've only lost one out of their last 35 test matches. So before we talk about rotating Johnny Bairstow and Jos Buttler and Sam Curran and the like, are we right to be optimistic that England can go and pull this off?
Yeah, Manners. Yeah, good afternoon. Manners, I just look at this whole scenario of resting and rotating and it doesn't sit, to be fair, it doesn't sit very well with me. But that's another story again. I look at the way England have performed over the recent past, and there's been some inconsistencies in their performance, and I think that a lot of that is down to not having continuity of selection. And I think when you talk about optimism going to India, I think even the best England 11 going to India fully firing would need an element of luck and an element of good fortune to come back with a series victory, let alone 3 players missing the first test, Jos Buttler missing the last 3, and everything that goes with that. These are a formidable unit when they're at home. I think the last time anybody beat India in India was Cook's 2012, 2013 side when Peterson got 200s, Cook got a good 100 in Mumbai, Bell got 100 in the 4th test match. Joe, I tell you how long that is. Joe Root plays his 100th test match in Chennai in the first test match, and he made his debut in that series in the 4th test match. So that's how long ago India have been beaten. Last time they were beaten in a series in a test match over there. So I think optimism, I don't think England not stand a chance, because you can never say that in a 2-horse race, but I think Joe would have to win all 4 tosses, and I think the DRS system would have to work for them like it did in Sri Lanka for them to stand any chance of winning. So you look at the Indian side that is just one in Australia. They've got a bigger pool of players to choose from. But I don't see India really making any rotation decisions unless their bowlers get injured. Their top 6 are very, very formidable. Their top 6 will score runs in India, and if England's top 3 don't get runs in England, this could be a long old 6 weeks in the subcontinent for Joe Root and the England cricket team.
Yeah, I agree. And you're just looking at the Indian squad, the 18 players they've named for the first 2 test matches, and my goodness me, they might be missing Ravindra Jadeja, but and they're missing a few others as well. Mohammad Shami's still not back, but they've got strength in depth and replacements for absolutely everybody. You mentioned the 2012-2013, that was the last time India lost a series. And you mentioned the hundreds and the runs and the great 186 that KP scored in Mumbai. But what people tend to forget, and we'll save this segment to speak in more detail when Bats joins us a little bit later on, but people tend to forget just how good Monty Panesar and Graham Swan were. I mean, you know, KP scored 186, and the captain scored mountains and mountains and mountains of runs, Sir Alistair Cook. But, you know, in that Mumbai Test match, Panesar and Swan took 19 of the 20 wickets. But let's get, before we, as I said, we'll talk about that with bats a little bit later on. Let's remind ourselves and our listeners what the head of selectors, Ed Smith, said about the rest and rotation policy and the fact that he's implementing it ahead of time, as it were. He's not waiting for people to need a rest. He's imposing a rest on them. So let's hear from Ed Smith.
We are being pragmatic. The pragmatism being that if you keep people in a bubble unchanged for 3 months, January, February, March, and expect them to play every game in every format, they will not be able to perform at their best, and England will be damaged as a result. So it is absolutely a pragmatic point that we wish to give people breaks, as we've discussed with the players, and we've had their, you know, understanding, and they also see that it's for the players' benefit as well as for England's benefit. And it's pragmatism which really is the foundation of our whole policy, Nick.
So is it okay? It's pragmatic. Is it disrespectful?
No, I don't think it's disrespectful. I think when we on TalkSport, we're basically a football and a heavily populated footballing station, and talk about football. You know, you see teams, you know, managers pick different teams week upon week. You know, teams will make 4 or 5 changes now, but that's the norm in the footballing world. I just think, when you say disrespectful, you've got to pick the right team, the best team you possibly can for the next situation, and feel as though you're going to win a test match. I don't think that happens. It's as easy to do that in cricket. And when I listen to Ed Smith, I sometimes get the feel, well, I do, I don't sometimes get the feel, I get the feel that Ed Smith sometimes tries to be too smart for his own good, and this could come back and bite him. And I will say this and go on record right now and say England potentially could lose in India, against New Zealand at home, against India at home, and against Australia away. And the whole thing will come on top of Joe Root, because he is captain. He is the front man. All the carry on with KP and Alistair in the ECB fell on Alistair Cook's door, because you know yourself, Manners. You know, the front man for the ECB at the time is the captain, because he's the one that speaks to the press the most. Now, if England do that, and I hope they don't, but if they do go and lose in them series, then for me it's the fault of the selection panel. Because if you're going to start sending players home and not giving the captain the best chance to have, you know, the best team out there to win a test match, you know, for the next test match and for the next test match, then all of a sudden you're just asking for trouble. Winning is a habit, you know, continuity of selection, and batting partners, bowling partners, all cliches you hear, batting and partnerships. Well, how can you bat in partnership if Stokes and Butler go and put on 150 in the first test and England do brilliantly? Well, times are hard in the second test match. Stokes is waiting for Butler to come out. Well, where is he? Oh, he's back in London with his feet up. You know, these things you have to get a winning mentality and a winning habit, and that you don't get when you're rotating people. And the way I look at it is, there's 2 big series, 2 big competitions for me between now and, you know, the start of 2022, and that is a T20 World Cup and the Ashes. And England should be preparing for the Ashes. The T20 World Cup, we've seen what happens in franchise cricket, where the coaching staff's already there, they put plans in place and the players drop in. Now, internationally, you can do that. So for me, it just seems as though we're prioritising more white ball than we are red ball. We're not giving the red ball captain, Joe Root, what he wants, which would be, for me, over the course of the next 14 or 13 test matches, his best team, as many chances as he possibly can to get ready for Brisbane in that first test match. His best team, his strongest team, Joe Root might not get it until Brisbane. And if he does that, then I can only see the sort of the dark clouds ahead over the test England test team.
So Root, Butler and Bairstow are probably England's 3 best players of spin. Bairstow scored runs in India 4 years ago, regularly 4 or 5 years ago on the last tour, even though they lost 4-0. Root scored runs as well. So you wonder whether do you try and save your best players for the third and fourth tests, or do you try and get off to a winning start? And Ed Smith said that Bairstow was being rested because he's such an important white ball player. It just seems that the primacy of Test cricket might be being compromised here, and it's a very difficult decision for Ed Smith and everyone to make, and it's very difficult for Joe Root as well. As you said, we haven't spoken much about his 100th Test match yet, but you know that he's only 2 wins away from becoming England's most successful Test captain, and yet he wouldn't want to say that his team is being compromised. Because he would like to say, I'm sure, that he's got 17 or 18 very qualified cricketers who are all capable of playing with great success for England. But as you said, it's I think by general consent not the strongest team in the first 2 tests.
No, it's not. Well, for the second Test match especially, because you're not only are you losing Wood, Bairstow and Curran, you're losing Buttler at the same time. So for me, I just go back, man, as I go back to Owen Morgan in England selectors got everything right for that 2019 World Cup. Everything right. The planning was meticulous, preparation was perfect, and Owen Morgan got everything. He got people rested, ready, like a racehorse, ready for that big race, for that big tournament, and they went and won that World Cup comfortably. I'm not saying if you do that you're going to go and win in India and you're going to go and win everything, but you give yourself the best chance. I just look at this and think Joe Root might not get his best team until he gets to Brisbane, and if that's the case, then all of a sudden, where's their confidence going to be? Where's their sort of cohesions as a team going to be? And if I am right when it comes to getting his team ready for that first Test match in Brisbane, then all of a sudden he doesn't stand a chance at winning the Ashes either. So I think it's again Ed Smith and the selection panel trying to be too smart for their own good, and not looking at what the next game is. And when you say Johnny Bairstow is too important for the white ball team, well then fair enough, tap Johnny Bairstow on the shoulder and say move on from him. Tell him to retire from Test match cricket, because you're more or less saying is we don't want you to play Test match cricket.
Sometimes it doesn't pay to look too far ahead in sport, does it?
Absolutely.
That one is going, gone! All the way, home run from Joe Root.
Has got it through square leg and away for 4. So one-man wrecking crew at the moment, KL Rahul.
Sweet shot from Dom Sibley. He's got his 100.
Here's Broad.
Bowled him off the bottom edge.
Oh, shot. What a shot that is. Absolutely effortless from Ollie Pope.
Stokes in again.
Small's an edge. It's been taken. Stokes has done it again. Just when England needed a hero, they found one.
I could picture a bit of Darren Gough in there with his trilby, cigar in one hand, glass of champagne in the other, naughty pair of strides on.
You're listening to the Cricket Collective on TalkSport 2 and our preview of England's upcoming tour of India, with every ball of the 4 tests, 5 T20s and 3 ODIs live and exclusive with us starting this Friday. As we've already mentioned earlier in the show, Friday's first test will be a historic one for the England captain Joe Root. After making his test debut in India in 2012, he returns to the subcontinent and will earn his 100th cap in Chennai. One man who's seen Root grow both as a player and a person over the years is the England legend and very much top of our bill with our coverage here on TalkSport 2, Darren Gough. Welcome, Goughy. It doesn't seem like, or does it seem like, 8 or 9 years ago that Joe made his debut?
Well, listen, a terrific young player. I think he always had a talent. I was speaking to one of my coaches who helped me a lot throughout my career, Steve Oldham. Army knows him, and he's a terrific bowling coach. And I remember speaking to him about Joe, and he always, as he was younger, it was similar to Varney to a certain extent, where you thought, yeah, he was probably going to go on and be a decent player. To go on and play 100 tests just shows the dedication. But if you put the hard work in, you work your socks off, you can get to the very, very top of any game. And I think we've all been blown away by some of the innings he's played for England. I mean, even now in Sri Lanka, I have backed to this kid non-stop. I mean, people talk about his captaincy, he's not very good and all that stuff. Certain people at TalkSport, where we've worked, not on our cricket commentary, thankfully, but outside of that. And I just couldn't believe it, because when you're around that dressing room and you're around the different personalities and you see the way he leads the team and the respect he has from the team, it's not even a question mark in my book. He's the natural leader for England, absolute natural.
He is, Goffey, and I remember, man, as an overweight, washed up has-been, I've nearly in retirement got asked a favour by Dizzy Gillespie. Can you come and play 4 games for me at Yorkshire at the end of the 2011 season? Ryan Sidebottom got injured, and I went down to Hampshire on this sort of up and down corrugated wicket, and I was mesmerised by what I was seeing. I was told, there's got a young kid, 18, 19-year-old Joe Root. He's special. Martin Moxon kept telling me he's special, and I was looking at the wicket and thinking, you're going to have to play well on here. He played in a different wicket to everybody else. I think we got 320. He got a double 100. And I kept phoning people during the innings. Normally, I'm like you, Goffey. I'll fall asleep when we're batting, not interested in watching us bat. But I just found myself sitting there as a 33, 34-year-old ex-international cricketer watching this young kid have so much time. And I remember ringing Neil Fairbrother. I rang many other people saying, I can't believe what I'm watching. This kid is unbelievable. And I even spoke to Jeff Miller the week after when we played at Chesterfield. Said in England they had Cook, they had Strauss, they had Trott, they had Bell, they had Peterson. I said, you might have to find a place for this kid. This kid has got everything, and he's unbelievable. And when you say the stellar career that he has got, but I think Goffey, he's got, not only has he got a bit of pressure on himself going into what is the winter, I actually think he needs to go to selectors and say, here, hold on. We're talking about the resting, and resting other people, and I need the best team I possibly can to give myself the best chance to go and win the Ashes.
I've got 3 questions for both of you, if I may. The first is, I remember last winter, Michael Atherton saying that when he saw Root make his debut in India, he thought he's going to play 100 Test matches for England, and others said that he hadn't thought that again until he saw Ollie Pope make his debut last winter. So the first question is, did you think that he would play 100 Test matches when you saw him early doors? Second, remembering the sort of cheeky chappy that he was, did you ever think of him as captaincy material? And the third question is, do you think he'll go past Sir Alistair as England's leading run scorer, given his age?
Yes to the first one. I did think he'd play 100 Test matches because I thought he was there and he belonged. I think the second one, if you become to be captain, if you're the best player, the captaincy tends to fall at your door anyway. So I expected him to be captain. I think the third one, I think it depends on his drive and determination and his hunger. I think he's got all that. So I think he stands every chance of having to play in the same amount of matches as Cook. It's just whether he can get the volume of runs in that time and how well England play in between as a team. That is, I think that's still an unknown.
Well, for me, I said when you saw him at 13, 14, I thought he'd be a good player. When you saw him play for England, I thought he'd be a great player. And that's the difference. And there's so many like that. Trescothick and Vaughan, exactly the same. County cricket didn't set it alight, although Joe were getting a lot more runs than they were getting in county cricket when he played. So the first one, as soon as I saw him playing for England, I thought he'd be an absolute world beater. I wouldn't say I thought he'd play 100 Tests because there's a lot of players come in and you think, yeah, he's going to be a good England player. 100 Tests is a huge achievement, and it's normally only batsmen that get there. But we've had 2 great bowlers that have got there over the past few years, so the landscape's changed on that. Captaincy. Again, having known him and being a cheeky chappy, I think if there would have probably been somebody else around who fit the bill, I think they might have got that opportunity, but it came for him. As Army said, he was the best player. He gets it, and I think he has built himself a good team. He has got himself a game plan along with Chris Silverwood. I think that's been ideal for him, a much needed appointment, because the problem was when he took over as captain, he was taking over with a coach already with his feet under the table, and he was setting his ways, and he didn't really have the power to do anything. Silvers came in, he already had his feet under the table. Silvers has took it on board, and they have put together the way England want to play, and I think we've all seen that of late. It's old-fashioned cricket. Bat first, get runs on the board, you've a good chance of winning the game. Simple as that. And will he break Alistair Cook's record? Of course he will. I have got absolutely no doubt. The only thing that will stop it is a real bad injury. This kid, he is hungry to play. He wants to play 2020. He wants to play 50 overs. And we've seen him being rested now. Whether it's rested from T20 and 50 over stuff, I don't know. But this kid wants to play every single game. He still looks 20.
Goffey,
Never mind his age. He looks 20.
Goffey, I tell you how far away he is from Alistair Cook's. He's 4,200 runs away. I've got lists in front of me. That's more runs in his career than Johnny Bairstow's got. It's the same amount of runs as Paul Collingwood got, Mark Butcher got, Ben Stokes has got now. That's how many runs he needs to get to Alistair Cook.
He's hungry, mate. He's hungry.
I know he is.
If he plays another 6 years, 5 years, he's walked it.
Yeah.
He's walked it. There's not even a doubt. He's walked it.
Especially if they keep leaving him out of white ball competitions.
But we all know as cricketers, we all know when you turn that corner, unfortunately, health, fitness.
Yeah, hunger, drive and determination.
Yes, self-doubt. There's a lot of things can get in the way of you going on and achieving. But a testament to cricketers these days. It's a big thing to walk away from. You've seen it with Broad and Anderson.
Yeah.
They have been pushed all the way. They've got central contracts. They don't want to lose these central contracts. It's a great way of living. It's a good life to have. Playing cricket, tests only. And that's what will happen to Joe Root eventually. It will become a test only captaincy. And if he's got the hunger and desire, he can play. Because he's fit. I think there's no doubt whatsoever he's fit. He works on his fitness. He's a lot fitter now than he was 5 years ago.
I'm throwing multiple questions at you both here. My concern, I mean, England need him to score 500 runs in this series, I would think. And my concern is that he doesn't come to the crease too often at 25 or 30 for 2 with the inexperience of the top three above him. But I also wanted to talk to you, especially, Goffey, about given how good Broad and Anderson were in the 2 tests in Sri Lanka, England's policy of playing one or the other.
Good luck. I talked about this last week. He's got a huge dilemma now. Absolutely huge, because I thought it was actually not a bad thing to do, especially when you go to Sri Lanka or Pakistan or India with those two. They're obviously records in those countries are not as good as they are elsewhere. And I thought, yeah, playing one, I can see that we get a bit of a pace in the side. Broad did brilliantly the first test. He was outstanding. Then the rest of him played Anderson in the second, 6 for 40 on a flatty. Sri Lanka still got a huge score, but what would they have got? England would have been totally out of that game if they would have got, if it weren't for Jimmy Anderson, they'd have got 450, 500. To get 6 for 40, he's now got a serious decision to make. But how does he get them both in? And 2 spinners, and Moeen Ali, and Ben Stokes.
Can't.
He can't. So he's got a huge decision to make. And Archer, I think, will have to play because they do need some kind of strike bowler, unless they use Stokes to be the battering ram. We've seen him do it in Sri Lanka, and he did it excellent. We did commentary out there. He was brilliant at what he did. But I think Stokes is better than that. Stokes is better than just saying to him, there's 4 overs, go and bowl 4 overs of bouncers. He's better than that, Stokes. Stokes is a wicket taker.
Yeah, as I look at the whole Broad and Anderson situation, is they've got 4 test matches out there. I'll play them both in Ahmedabad. I think first test match over there, so it's the 3rd test match because that's a day-night test match. I think I'd probably try and get to a point where if the ball if we feel as though the ball's going to move around under lights, I'll get them in the team. That would be the only one. I'd look if you go on what happened in Gaul, because we've got to remember we're playing 2 test matches at one venue, 2 test matches at another venue. So while the first test match is going on, the pitch that the second test match is going to be on is going to be in the open for 5 days in the heat and in the sun and everything that goes with what happens in the subcontinent. So it's going to be baking. So I'd imagine in the second test match you might need your 3rd spinner. It wouldn't surprise me if Moeen Ali pops up and bats at number 3 in the second test match, because what you've got is, even on the flat earth surf, the wicket that's going to turn. We've seen in Gaul that to try and keep the wicket together for the first couple of days, they must put some moisture in, which then brings the seamers into play. When you look at what happened in Gaul, 10 wickets in the first innings for seamers, 10 wickets in the second innings for spinners. So if you get Moeen in at number 3 for the second lot of test matches, then all of a sudden you've got 3 seamers and 3 spinners. So you give yourself the best option. I just look at this whole Broad and Anderson. It's a toss of a coin for the first test match for me. I'd go on a gut feeling, and my gut feeling would be I'd pick Anderson for the first test match. I'd then pick Broad for Anderson for the second test match. I'd pick them both in the 3rd test match, and then when I get to the 4th test match, I work out where you are in the series. And if they've both gone well, then you might punt to play them both again. But I'd be very surprised if you play them both in back-to-back Test matches.
Or if we lose
Jimmy.
Or if we lose you 3-0, we let some of the other bowlers have a go.
Yeah,
save them for the summer and the Ashes.
Exactly.
Because that's what it comes down to. Well, Armin mentioned a good point there, and I did an interview with an Indian newspaper last week, and I talked about this, and it's a very difficult one because I'm a big fan of Zach Crawley. He found it difficult in Sri Lanka, which people can do, He's still a young kid, learning on the job. And Sibley as well, he talked about being in a dark place with his batting and not sure who his next run were going to come from, but he gutsed it out. He got runs in that second inning. So Burns is going to come in, right? I don't think there's any doubt about that.
But why should he, though, Darren? This annoys me. It really annoys me.
He's going to do it's the left-right arm. He's going to come in, especially with they're going to open with a spinner probably. They've got a few injuries themselves, India, and they've got. Well, I'm hoping we talk about them because they're bowling attack. They've got 7 bowlers. I think 3 of them are unavailable because of injuries. But yeah. I agree with you. But I think Zach Crawley, who got a big double not long ago, a few Test matches ago, the only way to get Moeen Ali into the side, because unless they do leave Dom Bess out, is to put Ali at 3. So I agree with you on that, but that means one of the 3 missing out.
I think you've got to shoehorn him in. I completely agree with that. I absolutely think he's a wicket-taking spinner.
Leach is in. Oh, he's straight through. It's the quicker one. Jack Leach has pushed that one through.
He's knocked him over. There it is. Simply the best. He's picked up his maiden 5-wicket haul.
Here's mine again. Big appeal for leg before wicket, and up goes the finger, and he's walked straight off.
You're listening to the Cricket Collective on TalkSport 2 and our preview of England's upcoming tour of India, with every single ball live and exclusive here on TalkSport 2, starting with the first test in Chennai this Friday. After taking 22 wickets between them in Sri Lanka, this coming tour will be another massive step up for England spinners Dom Bess and Jack Leach. One man who's well qualified to speak about them was and still is a very fine off-spinner himself, and also a man who was part of the last time England were in India back in 2016. That's our very own Surrey spinner Gareth Batty. Welcome, Bats. It would be, I think, verging on cruel to compare Dom Bess with Ravi Ashwin, who's got 377 Test wickets. But people inevitably will, won't they? I've got so many questions about the spinners, not only about Jack Leach, but also we were just talking with Goffey, and we came to the conclusion that somehow England have got to shoehorn Moeen Ali into the side. Somehow, if that means batting in the top order. Your thoughts on the spin conundrum? Because it may well decide the series.
Yeah, hi. Look, it's a difficult one, and I mean this with the utmost respect to everybody in the squad. Moeen Ali is our number 1 spinner for me. It was reasons that the world is fractionally crazy as it is at the minute as to why he didn't play in Sri Lanka. For me, he plays as long as he's healthy. He has all the knowledge, he has all the experience. And to boot, I think his skill sets are better than everybody else on the trip. So for me, I'm picking my best team, and Moeen Ali gets in there. As I say, it's not being disrespectful to the other 2. They had pretty good series in Sri Lanka. I think both of them would openly, as part of the Spinners Union, say that they have bowled better in their careers. But, and this is the big but, their numbers were magnificent in Sri Lanka. England got over the line and beat Sri Lanka convincingly. So for their confidence, it's a brilliant thing. Hopefully behind closed doors, they're working on a couple of little bits, which I know they will be, and I know they are. And then it's just a question of the balance of the team and how they marry up, whether they try and shoehorn 3 spinners into the side, because Moeen obviously bats very well, and change the batting order, or whether they just stick with the 2 spin options.
Bats, what did you make of you mentioned there a little bit about Bess and Leach? What did you make of their performance in Sri Lanka? Because when you look at it, and you know more than anybody else, there's no warm up games. You go into a tour when you're thinking as a spinner, I need probably 60, 80, 100 match overs under my belt before I hit that first Test match. They've managed to get 80 and 100 overs each going into the India series, and you say the numbers were good, but it didn't look as though they had sort of any confidence with their bowling, or any sort of continuity from over to over, never mind spell to spell.
Yeah, I know from speaking with Jeetan Patel, he was big on the boys trying to get more square spin into their armoury, which is something we don't do in England a huge amount. You want the ball to be canted at 45 degrees, angling for the off spinner to sort of leg slip for the left arm spinner towards slip. So square spin is very, very different. The ball travels a bit further, it's flatter, you don't have the same shape of loop and drop and what have you through the air. So I know that was something that they would have sort of squeezed in last minute, and it is purely for those type of pitches. I think the biggest thing for the original sort of bit of the question, Harmy, is that all the best pros actually don't just look at outcome. Yes, outcome is brilliant, but they get their confidence, they get their huge rewards from having great process. So their practice is second to none. They work harder than everybody else, and that's why they're the best. And I just feel that the England spinners take great heart that their numbers were brilliant, and the outcome is numbers. That's what we live and die by from time to time. But if they're judging themselves on their process, which I know will be a big part of it, I think they'll end up being in a very good place.
Two of your Surrey teammates have been in the news, Bats. Harmy was just asking some legitimate questions about the assumption that Rory Burns will come straight back into the team. His numbers aren't particularly dazzling, are they? Averaging 32 after 21 Test matches. And also Ben Foakes, who looks set to keep, presumably, in the second, third and fourth Test matches, although Bairstow comes back for the third and fourth. Your thoughts on those two? Presumably Foakes he's widely regarded as the best in the country, if not the world, standing up to the spinners.
Yeah, I think he's keeping, like you say, I think everybody within the game acknowledges what a wonderful gloveman he is. The unfortunate thing in the modern world is it's not just about the gloves anymore. Adam Gilchrist changed the face of cricket with his sparkling career, and now we expect our keepers to marry up with the bat. I mean, we were all in Sri Lanka and witnessed Foakesy on debut getting the 100 in goal and played brilliantly well. And then he's basically been redundant since. He's got brilliant skill sets batting. He really is. He doesn't bat like somebody who's got another string to his bow. He's a proper batter. So look, he will want to take this opportunity. I think he'll be in a good place. He'll be fresh, and he's been watching on the sidelines and been working very hard. Rory, on the flip side, took a massive decision from a career point of view to be at home and miss the Sri Lanka series. So you put yourself back in the mixing pot with everybody else selection-wise. Had he have gone to Sri Lanka, then I think he would have been a shoo-in to start. But my take, and it always has been, and it's not going to be changed, the man in possession should be keeping the shirt for me more often than not. This is a different situation because Rory's obviously centrally contracted. I don't actually know if Crawley is centrally contracted. If you are centrally contracted, for me, you should be playing. If you're preparing properly, you're centrally contracted for a reason. You're a number one pick. It is a good conundrum for England. It's a good conundrum for the coach and captain to have those selection dilemmas. I wouldn't be tinkering too much with what our format was. Obviously, Stokes plays. That's a given. Obviously, Jofra Archer plays. That's a given. But everybody else, maybe a left-hander at the top might be a good thing.
You mentioned the shirt means something. Rory Burns give that up. Does the shirt mean something now in the Test match team, in the England Test match team, when they're sending people home and the rest, and Hooray Henry and whatever for various different reasons? Does that Test shirt mean a great deal now? Because if Jos Buttler goes and gets 100 in the first Test match, like Johnny Bairstow in Sri Lanka, if he had done that, then that Test, he's not got the Test shirt the next Test match.
Yeah, I'm with you, Steve, and I know exactly what angle you're coming from. And in a normal world, I would agree with you. But this isn't a normal world, and it hasn't been for a year or so. And I think England are very, very aware of the obstacles faced with players and ourselves at times, that you're in these isolated bubbles, hotels, where you're literally staring at four walls, you're away from family. The whole touring saga is very difficult and different now to what it would be normally. And I think it's almost a moral standing that England are trying to look after players as best they possibly can do. And they're trying, for me, they're trying to do it so that a couple of senior players rest out for this bit and then a couple miss for this bit. They're trying to keep as much seniority around as possible, but they're also looking and building forward with these guys that play all three formats. They're trying to understand this whole situation that we find ourselves in. And as much as anything, they're trying to keep people's mental state as well as physical state in check, which I think is commendable to the ECB to realise that. And Chris Silverwood to sometimes not be putting out his best players and still churning out results. India will be a different challenge.
Well, there's no substitute for a fresh cricketer, and let's just remind ourselves that if his enthusiasm to get back stuck into Test cricket is anything to go by, then Rory Burns should do very well.
Jumping to get back into work and getting back into business, 100%. I can't wait to get going. I've got a bat literally out and shadow batting in a mirror behind me. Not gone full Steve Smith and whited up yet, but yeah, just having the bat in hands and training those sort of things. Yeah, I'm hungry to get going.
Root plays him well this time. Pushed off the back foot, a typical Joe Root shot.
Down the leg side again. Rishabh Pant. Will this be another one-handed six? Yes, it is.
Did stay low. A bit of a cutter from Stuart Broad. He's got 2 in 4 balls.
Hello, unpleasant fly, doing an impression of the ball. I'll just whip you away over my head. I'll make up the shot. That's how good I am. Stokes in again. Steaming in. Smalls an edge. It's been taken. Stokes has done it again. Just when England needed a hero, they found one.
You're listening to the Cricket Collective on TalkSport 2 and our preview of England's upcoming tour of India with every single ball live and exclusive here on TalkSport 2, starting with the first test in Chennai this Friday. It's time now to get the Indian perspective as the former Indian opening batsman Akash Chopra joins us. Welcome, Akash. You well?
Absolutely fine. Thank you so much. And looking forward to a series as good as this one and being on TalkSport as well. I've
got so many questions to ask you, but the burning one, and it's more of an observation really, and I want to get your thoughts on Cheteshwar Pujara, because I'm guessing he's probably a man after your own heart. I mean, I remember watching you and your determination at the top of the order, batting time, wearing bowlers down. I bet you love Pujara, don't you?
I love him to bits. Absolutely right. Pujara is one of its kind. He's the only player who can actually bat the way he does. And I'm not just talking about the Indian cricket team. I'm talking about just world cricket at this point in time. He's someone who just defines patience and resilience, intensity of a different kind, and intent of a different kind as well. And you would see him every single time putting in his 100% and grinding down the opposition, whether he's playing in Australia, England, and definitely at home. At home, I can promise you even before the series starts that English bowlers are in for a lot of bowling, and Pujara will be facing a lot of those balls as well. He's like a ball. He's like a wall. What you throw at him, it doesn't go through. It just falls there at his feet. And he's got this unique way of playing, but then it's very, very effective, and he's got oodles of patience. So very difficult to dislodge. You need to bowl that Pat Cummins kind of delivery that we saw on the previous tour, but those deliveries on these surfaces, well, even if your name is Jimmy Anderson, Stuart Broad, or Jofra Archer, on these surfaces, it's not going to be easy.
Where do you see the series being decided, Akash? We are making no secret of the fact that we believe India are very strong favourites. But, there used to be questions about the depth. When India finally got this world-beating team, there were questions about the depth. And now they use 20 players in Australia, the most that a team has ever used to win a series. Are there any question marks? Do you think, are there any areas of the Indian team that England might look to try and exploit?
See, there aren't too many. I'll be very honest. And yes, in Australia, it was a team of walking wounded. We didn't even know whether we'll have a fully fit playing 11 to take on Australia in the final test match at Gaba. But I think the decisive factor in this series, the defining contest will be English spinners bowling to Indian batsmen. I think fast bowlers will cancel each other out. Batting also, I've seen a lot of English batting in Sri Lanka, albeit the quality of bowling attack that Sri Lanka had was a bit inferior as compared to what they will counter in India. But then you've got Joe Root, who's in red hot form. I really like the look of Dan Lawrence. There is Johnny Bairstow. Of course, he's not available for the first test match. So that's you still will bat all right is what I feel, because these pitches are not going to be rank turners. Gone are the days when India used to prepare absolute dust bowls where you just could not bat. These will be fair surfaces. So batting also, in a sense, if England bats very well, will cancel each other out to a certain degree. I think how the English spinners are going to bowl to the Indian batsmen, Tom Bess and Jack Leach, will they be able to play the role that I'm not even going down that Graeme Swann and Monty Panesar road in 2012. I'm just talking about control, some amount of discipline, where you don't allow the opposition to run away with the game. Because the moment that starts to happen, then Joe Root's hands will be tied. I think that will be the contest. That will define the series and perhaps decide the series in the end.
And Akash, you talk about Pujara there, Manners. I think you say a man after your own heart batting on them wickets. I think as a former fast bowler, he'd break my heart thinking of bowling at Pujara every single day of the Test series. I think he would break me eventually. But somebody who would break me as well if he did get in, and that's Virat Kohli. He comes back into the side after a parental leave, but Akash, how well did Rahane do in Australia? He was fantastic. And will there be any sort of change in Kohli's demeanour when he comes back and leads the side, or will he just go back in and be the Virat Kohli that we all know and love?
I think there will be some amount of conversation in his own head. His outside demeanour, you will not really, the facade is not going to give you anything. He'll be the same Virat Kohli, same aggressive, in your face, up for a fight. But deep down, he would also know that, people have started looking at me differently. People are now questioning my leadership skills. And therefore, what we've seen so far from Kohli, the batsman, he's been at the forefront of every rescue mission for Virat Kohli, the captain. So that's what I expect from Virat Kohli, the batsman, more than what Virat Kohli, the captain, is likely to do. And having said that, when you're leading this team in India, leading is not that difficult. You need to just go to your key bowlers, just make very few errors, as few as possible, and you'll be all right because you've got the personnel. So it's the Virat Kohli, the batsman. I'm very eager to watch. A guy who hasn't played a lot of cricket recently, didn't score a single international century in 2020, one after about 12 odd years in his international career. 2021, will he be like keen and how to just set that right? So this series from Virat Kohli's bat perspective, I think is going to be crucial.
And who keeps wicket for India? Is it the specialist glove man, Saha, or if Rishabh Pant doesn't keep, is there, given his heroics in Australia, is there room to play him as a batsman?
See, it'd be a travesty if he doesn't keep. Rishabh Pant is the present and also the future of Indian cricket, and I'm not just talking about Test cricket. He's that kind of a player who should actually be drafted into all three sides as soon as possible. I see him playing, but I don't see him playing purely as a batsman, because what exactly has happened in the last 12 to 18 months is that he was the most favourite child of Indian cricket, and then he was made into a veritable pariah who nobody wanted to touch. So from someone who was the guy who was flown into England for the World Cup as a replacement player, a talisman character, X Factor and all of that, and couldn't find a place in any of the three formats is what he has seen. But now that the way he's batted in the last two Test matches, and also he's not that bad a keeper. It's not that he's a goalkeeper standing behind the stumps. He's all right. Of course, work in progress. But then that progress will happen only when he gets to work something. So that is where I feel place Rishabh Pant as a keeper, and unfortunately no room for Wriddhiman Saha at this point in time. I'd be very tempted to play five bowlers. It is almost impossible to now drop Washington Sundar with after what he's done in the first Test match. That was his debut. Scored runs, picked up wickets. The game was at Brisbane. Tamil Nadu is where he comes from. Chennai is the first venue for the first couple of Test matches. it actually augurs well for him to now play 5 bowlers.
Akash, you mentioned that Chennai, the first test match. What sort of surfaces are we going to have over the course of the series? Because India have picked Hardik Pandya, and so either going with a sort of a seam bowler and all-rounder. Are they expecting a little bit more pierce in the wickets, relatively so from an Indian point of view? And does that bring England's sort of strength into play?
I think it won't be too far-fetched to believe that pitches are going to be a lot fairer in terms of pace, bounce, at least for the first test match at that very venue. So when you talk about Chennai, traditionally the pitch at Chepauk turns. Every pitch in India turns. Chennai turns a little more. But for the first test match, you would expect a bit more grass, the surface to be a little harder, so that by the time the second test match comes, you're not playing on a dust bowl. Because I think India has learnt a very important lesson when Australia came to India last time around. India prepared a dust bowl at Pune, lost the test match in 2.5 days. And that is when they realized that let's not even the playing field by producing an absolute turner or a dust bowl. Let's go with a fair pitch, and if you are a better side, you should win. So I'm expecting decent surfaces. Of course, spin will play a key role, but don't rule out the faster bowlers. Last word on Hardik Pandya. I don't think he's been picked as a guy who will give you 15-20 overs a day, because he hasn't didn't bowl a single over in the IPL. Bowled about 4 or 8 overs on that tour to Australia in the limited over series. He wasn't picked for the test matches for that very reason, that he's not bowling. So now that he's picked, I don't think he's picked for bowling 15-20 overs and play as a batsman who can actually give you seam bowling option. He's picked up, or rather he's been picked in the side as a pure batsman.
Akash, thanks so much for your time. We look forward to your company throughout what we all hope will be a brilliant series. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It is a pleasure. I'm looking forward to the series as well.
Thanks, Akash. Just before we finish off then, Harmy, what is your predicted scoreline?
I think it pains me to say it, but I just don't see England with the way they're looking and mentally going into the series, resting and rotating. I can't see a positive outcome in this series, and I look at it and I don't think there'll be a draw in the series either. It's not going to rain, I don't think, in India, so it pains me to say I think England could lose 4-0.
Thanks, Harmy. For the record, I'm going 3-1. I think England will somehow find a way to sneak one. Maybe the pink ball test. You've been listening to The Cricket Collective on TalkSport 2. If you missed any of the show or wish to catch up, you can download the podcast from the following on feed, available on Apple Podcasts, Acast and Spotify. Remember, you can hear every ball of England's 4 tests, 5 T20s and 3 ODIs against India, live and exclusive here on TalkSport 2. It all gets underway this Friday at 3:45 a.m. Thanks for listening to The Cricket Collective on TalkSport 2.